Hi, this is David Unsworth, English editor of the Pan Am Post. Today we'll be speaking with artist Agnieszka Pilat. Born in Poland, she moved to the United States in 2002 to pursue a BFA degree at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. Having witnessed the transformation of Poland from a communist Soviet bloc state to a capitalist democracy, she has incorporated the spirit of this political revolution into her work. We are here today in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of libertarians. Agnieszka, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, David.
Did I get the pronunciation right?
Yeah, close enough. Very good.
Okay. Agnieszka. Why don't you tell us about your memories, to begin with, of that very tumultuous time period, the late 1980s in Poland? And also, I'd love to hear about, Poland has been a country that has been kind of sandwiched in between empires. At one point, it was divided up between the Russian Empire, the Prussian Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Yeah.
I studied a bit of Russian history in college.
I can see that, yeah.
And obviously, during the World Wars, it was being pressured between the Russia, Germany.
Yeah, let's just say we have neighbors who like to come over, visit, and sometimes they don't leave.
By all means. So, what was your take on this? You would have been very young, but clearly what happened in the late 80s and early 90s has been very influential in your life and in your work as an artist.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to grow up in a time that I just caught the tail end of communism, so I got a little taste of that, and then I saw the transformation, and now I see, semi-free social democracy, and the changes, just amazing changes. So starting from being a kid that toilet paper was a commodity that, we were dreaming about.
It sounds like Venezuela.
You know what? Yes.
Our next door neighbor.
Yes. It's like across... The weather is like North Korean weather, and darkness of North Korean spirit and the Venezuelan economy. Just brutal, very brutal. So it was very interesting for me to see the transformation. So again, growing up with central economy, so you go to a store and all the shelves would be filled up with vinegar. Vinegar was always big. It was always on the shelves, but if you wanted to get some food, as a kid, growing up in relative poverty, but it wasn't jarring because everyone was sort of poor. So we didn't really know that much we were missing. But it was tough, very limited food, very limited options with food, never fresh fruit, very only in the season. We did trade with Cuba. We got some very good oranges from Cuba and bananas. That was great.
Rum, cigars?
No, nothing of that. I'm sure that came in, but that's probably what the apparatchik at the party at the top, they probably
the Politburo of the Polish Communist Party would enjoy?
Yes, and I remember Americans, you guys were sending us cheddar cheese. So just to describe the difference of taste, what Polish food was and American cheese. When I had a piece of the cheddar cheese, I was like heaven. I couldn't believe the color of it because everything in Poland was like either white or gray. So the orange colors, we were just freaking out. So just unbelievable, but we got it very rarely, and I think most of it went to people who were in the Communist Party. And I'll give you a good example, like a funny anecdote, how the food was. So close to 1989, I guess, the economy was really, really bad, and there was solidarity on the streets, so the state imposed a curfew. So during curfew, you could be on the streets only during the day, and between 8 p.m., I think, till 7 a.m., you were not allowed to be on the streets.
And why did they do that?
Because they didn't want people, I think, to go to parties, to evenings, getting together, or they just wanted to be assholes. Maybe there was no reason. They're like, hey, how more can we oppress them? They were just mean to us.
This is late 80s, 88, 89,
yeah.
I'm guessing?
Yes.
That is astounding.
Yeah, they just
And this was for how long?
At least a couple of years. That's what I remember. I was little, so I might be off here. But anyway, the story I want to say is that I remember around Christmas time, you had to get online and wait online if you wanted to get some real food, like a piece of meat or some candy. You had to stand online. Generally, it meant 2 hours waiting online for food. And as a kid, I was used to that. My whole life, I remember being online and hating it with my mom. But there was Christmas Eve, and my mom set up an alarm to get up early to get some nice food for Christmas, and she overslept.
Oh, no.
So I remember this very well. So she wakes up and oh my God, Jesus Christ, I overslept. We're gonna have awful Christmas. There is no food. This is horrible. And she looks out the window, and she's like, yeah, there's a huge line of people already. By the time I get to the window, everything's gonna be gone. But then something happened. So there was still curfew hour, and people were lined up, but it was illegal to wait online because it was still curfew. So she looks through the window. A bunch of police vans comes up. They put everyone in the vans and then drive them away. And my mom walked into the store. She was first in the store because she overslept, so she wasn't in the street. And so I remember that story.
That is your own Christmas miracle, if you will.
Yes.
I mean, just to imagine, if you do the comparison, if you look at even the worst off countries now in Eastern Europe who have slowly been making this transformation to a market economy, I mean, to imagine something like that now, 25 years later, a generation later, it's unthinkable. You go to places that are still relatively poor, like Albania or Bosnia or Macedonia or Kosovo, but they have a market economy. There's a meme. Your story reminds me a lot of a meme that's going around a lot on the internet right now. It's a meme, and it says, socialism, people line up waiting for bread. Capitalism, bread lines up waiting for people. This idea that socialism is great for the working man or the working woman, and it's so kind and it takes care of people. Like Ayn Rand said, socialism is communism with a human face. I mean,
yes. So needless to say, for me to come from that background and come here and see the same sort of ideas crawling into American spirit, it was just disheartening. I was very sad, very angry, just really horrible, because I've seen what those ideas lead to. And then I saw again within 10 years my parents building a very successful business. My dad, actually growing up, my dad has had problems with alcohol, which a lot of people in Poland did, because you're just depressed, there's nothing to do. He never looked at alcohol again because they were building a business, so it gave a meaning to his life. So there was very, very personal for me again, from coming home to a father who is just like having drink because there's no point of making an effort. If you make an effort, if you stick your head out, you're gonna get punished.
And in Russia as well, I mean, if you look at what 3 or 4 generations of communism have done, look at what's happening. Life expectancy is tanking in Russia, alcoholism, smoking.
Yeah.
It's these centrally planned market economies where Big Brother is always watching you. It seems to lead to a lot of human despair and a lot of unhealthy lives.
Yeah, there's no point just into trying anything. Even people who were on a very uneducated lower level. So like my dad, he was a pastry chef, which was a pretty cool job in communism, working for a state-owned bakery. But like my grandmother, she's one of those, she's a generation whose life was disrupted by World War II. So she never got an education. So she was just after the war, she was a worker at the needle factory. So they were working on, what's the word? Like piecemeal. The more you make, the more money you make. There's a word for it in English that I can't think of.
A commission, or you get a...
Yeah,
you get paid for what you personally produce.
Like Charlie Chaplin when you see him trying to keep up with the machine.
Like an assembly line?
Yeah, assembly line,
That's
right.
It, okay, yeah.
But she said that anytime she would try to work harder, because she was promised, well, if you work harder, we'll send you free for vacation, or you're going to get extra candy.
It almost sounds like capitalism, surprisingly.
Yes, but then as soon as she caught up to that better standard, like, okay, she did really great, they changed it. They changed, well, you can't do 100 needles, now you have to do 200 needles. So just so corrupt.
Now, what do you remember about say how open was civil society. I mean, what I'm imagining that what your memories are of state-controlled television, state-controlled radio.
Yeah.
There weren't American films. Were you allowed to watch American films?
No, but okay. So yeah, so we had only 2 channels, and it was all Russian films.
Oh no!
Yeah, about the World War II, and it all lied about how the Russians came to quote save us from Hitler. And I was taught history. The way I was taught history was that Russians came to save us from Hitler. Now we know, no, Hitler and Stalin had a pact to attack Poland together. We were never taught that. It was a big lie. We were never taught that. We thought they were our friends. So that was quote entertainment, but there was a black market. And the black market, you could get Rocky. And Rocky and Sylvester Stallone, just like you say, John Paul II had a big part in breaking communism. Rocky and Sylvester Stallone had a huge part in breaking communism, showing up the culture, the ability to pursue your dream. I mean, it's still the most. I watch it at least once a year still. I love that movie.
And what about music? What about? I imagine this time radio was still big, but it was all state-controlled radio, and
there was no music.
There no music whatsoever.
It depends on the household probably. In my
so it
household,
was propaganda radio.
Yeah, in my household there was no
our
music.
glorious socialist revolution achieved this year, and we produced more boots than before and more cars than before. And
I get a good story. So, okay, first of all, there was Radio Free Europe, which was quote illegal, and we had access to it. And like I would notice my grandparents like at night trying to keep me away from a room. And now I know they were listening to Radio Free Europe, which was very helpful to us. But I lost the story. There was some other story I want to tell you about music. Well, forget about it. I forgot. Maybe
you'll remember it.
Yeah,
in the meantime, I've got a question for you. Would you agree that Eastern Europeans in general are quite a bit more aware of the dangers of socialism and communism, and for that reason they might align, say, more with the political right or, say, the libertarian movement?
Yes.
It seems that Western Europeans are a lot of them are kind of democratic socialist types, Bernie Sanders types, but they never lived through real communism.
That's right. Yeah. Definitely, I would say, and that's why Poland is like one of the most pro-American countries in the world, if it's not the most pro-American country.
Yeah.
We always looked up to America, and still till today. So, even Donald Trump going visit in Poland, that was really very big for us, and we always felt snubbed by Obama administration. With Obama, who promised bringing, mission, the shields for the
NATO missile shields.
So he reneged that deal. That was a big slap in the face because we as Poland, we are a small country. We stood up to Russia and we said we're going to put American troops on our ground because we don't trust you guys. And then Obama backed out from that. So that was politically very bad for Poland. So his visit was important to us.
And that affects even up to the Baltic, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, even Norway and Finland are concerned now about that to some degree. Now, I was in Budapest a couple of years ago, and I went to the Museum of Terror, and I thought it was going to be kind of like a haunted house. It turns out the Museum of Terror in Budapest is a memorial to the victims of the communist terror, and I couldn't believe it. In the United States, we never have that. In the United States, the pop culture, if you will, is largely controlled by very left-wing people that probably think socialism is a great idea, people that gave money to the Bernie Sanders campaign. But in Eastern Europe, I mean, in 1956, the Soviet army rolled in with tanks and crushed the Hungarian uprising, and then they did the same thing in Prague in 1968. And you were saying that in Poland there was never anything quite at that level, but they would target and kill opposition leaders.
Yeah,
right?
so in Poland, what different, and there were tanks in Poland on the streets, and I think I even remember seeing one on my street, but they were Polish tanks. So Poland took a different approach, and they were trying to please the Russians. So our government was oppressing us, and if there was any, the masses weren't weren't addressed like in Prague. Nothing like this happened, but if there was leadership that was sticking their head out, that person would be killed. So there was a very famous, well-known priest who was killed, who was preaching politics from the pulpit.
In the 80s?
Yeah, in the 80s. Yeah, so he was killed. So there was he's like a big figure for us. And I mentioned to you earlier, church in Poland had a huge political positive role because it was the only other entity that had enough strength to stand up to the political party. So there was church actually played a big role, and John Paul II, of course, a big role in fighting communism. But so yeah, when I came here to America, to see Americans embracing, like you mentioned, I mean, Bernie Sanders, that's the classic, embracing the same ideas and that philosophy that really destroyed my country and my family personally, was just painful and horrible, and made me very angry and surprised too. Like you're saying, that Americans have no idea how bad communism is. We in Poland, people have no idea that what's happening here, that those ideas are taking root here. I mean, we in Poland, people don't know.
I mean, on the one hand, there are few Americans who would openly say, I'm a socialist, and there are even few who would actually support communism, but they support kind of socialism light. And we don't really learn about it, whether in high school or in college, we don't really learn about what it was actually like to live under the onerous yoke of Soviet communism and how this ruined half of Europe for 2 generations. It seems like we really should be paying attention to this and make sure it doesn't happen again.
So my thing is, because again, and I mentioned, I'm more focused on philosophy than on politics, because I strongly believe that by the time people go voting, it's very hard to switch someone from being a Democrat to being a Republican, or the other way, because by the time you're 30, your political ideas are already established. So actually, when I came here, when I saw the problems, I personally thought, well, you have to reach to young people and colleges so they understand really what good philosophy is and what bad philosophy is. And that's why I went to school. I studied art, and my dream was to make an Ayn Rand graphic novel, Atlas Shrugged, into a book, into a graphic novel.
Are you working on that now?
No, I'm not.
You will be someday.
Well, actually, the book is in the making. Ayn Rand Institute is working on it. So they are working on the book. We'll see how it turns out. Atlas Society is just a finishing adaptation of Anthem, which is another Ayn Rand book, into a comic book. So the idea is to, and like I know the artists, I'm involved in that process. The idea is to reach young people, to change their philosophy and open them up to a different way of thinking before they start voting.
And one of the things that, this philosophical divide, individualism versus collectivism, this is at the heart of everything just as much as capitalism and socialism. That should be an idea that appeals to young people, even if they are of a left-leaning perspective. I mean, you are an individual. You're responsible for your own life. You're responsible for your own choices. You have the freedom. You have the freedom to succeed. You have the freedom to fail. Why aren't we doing... I mean, I'm a huge Ayn Rand fan, and I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing more to promote individualism, which is at the heart of all these things that we believe in?
My guess is that, again, it boils down to philosophy, that, since you were very little, the best example is always Yaron Brock gives on this example when he talks. He says, when you were a little kid in a sandbox, you had your toys, and there's another kid who, let's say, they came with no toys because they forgot. You are taught at 2 years old, share your toys, don't be an asshole, give the toys to the other kid because he needs it. So we grow up with this mentality that it's not okay to love yourself and do stuff for yourself. Your role on this earth is to share and do other people's lives better. So if you grow up and you believe it, and I think that's at the core of the problem of Republican Party. Republican Party is in a conflict in itself because they preach not what they believe. There's a lot of religious background about sharing and Jesus and all doing good, but then they wanna, they don't wanna support people who are poor. Let's just name it what it is. And I think that's why they're having such a problem selling their message.
And what you were discussing before, it works great in a sandbox. Sharing toys in the sandbox is a great idea, but if you apply that, say, to collectivization of agriculture, you turn it, sooner or later, you turn it into mass famine. If you go to, rural Russia or Poland or Belarus, and this all happened, we can see what happened with it, and you say to the farmers that have less land, well, we're going to blame it on the rich farmers that have more land, and then the state takes over, collectivizes everything, and you ruin agriculture in a country. I mean, I don't think, unfortunately, I bet 90% of young people today, 18 to 30-year-olds today, could not give you a sound argument about why communism will ruin a society, because they don't know, or they don't care.
Well, it's irrational. I think the whole thing is irrational, just like the sandbox, or if you grow up again believing that it's that your role again is to help others. Like if somebody needs something, they have a right to it. It's very hard to do other things, even if they work. I mean, we've seen East Germany and West Germany. You don't need a better example than that. The same people, exact same people, same time, they got divided, and so we know what works rationally, but people are irrational because they want to follow, quote, what they think is right. And for them, what is, quote, right, is to sacrifice for other people.
Sure. Before we wrap up here, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the art you're working on now? I saw that your art is sold in several galleries in Massachusetts and in the Bay Area, and what did I say? A gallery in Arizona as well.
Yeah, I have galleries in many places in the United States, and right now. So again, I went to school with Atlas Shrugged was my inspiration originally, but then I moved towards fine art, and right now I am painting a series of royal portraits of aging technology, and this is actually a really interesting time for it too, because it's an ongoing conversation about technology that disrupts and fear, our human fear towards automation, especially in North America right now. So Donald Trump, this whole thing comes in here, this whole conversation, what we're going to do about it. So that's what my painting is kind of about, but it's also a tribute to America, to industry, to so I call them royal portraits. For me, they're royal portraits. And as much as they open this conversation about, are we scared of technology? Is technology our foe or our friend? It's for me again. It's symbol of America. That's what America is. This industrial power. And by painting them, I pay tribute to the old machines.
And what's the name of the main gallery that you work with, or
I have the gallery in Boston. I know you just came back from Boston.
It's called
Gold Gallery, Michael Gold Gallery in Boston. And the best way to find my work is always on Instagram. I'm very big on Instagram. I have a lot of people follow me, and I live on Instagram. Everything I do, you'll see on Instagram. A lot of my process, and my Instagram handle is Agnieszka Pilat, AGNIESZKA _PILAT on Instagram. That's where I live, really.
Well, Agnieszka, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And
Thanks, David.
Hopefully sometime in the future, if you when you release the graphic novel, we'd love to have you back on the Pan Am Post to talk about it.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.